Hey there, little cleaner. Come on over here and have some fun with us, won't you? Marcus Thorne yelled from the middle of the mat, his black belt gleaming under the dojo's fluorescent lights. I bet you've never seen a real fight in your life, have you? Keira Jordan stopped pushing her mop and slowly raised her head. At 25, she'd been working this part-time cleaning job for a few months, always coming in after hours when the students had left. But on this particular Thursday evening, the advanced class had run longer than usual. I don't want to disturb the class, Sensei, Keira replied calmly, turning back to scrub a stubborn stain on the floor. I'm just trying to finish up so you and everyone else can have your space. Marcus let out a dramatic laugh that echoed through the dojo. Look at this, everyone. The little cleaner is too scared to even step onto the mat. The 8 students present chuckled awkwardly, some clearly uncomfortable with the situation. What Marcus didn't know was that Keira had spent the last 7 years trying to bury her true self. 7 years since she'd left the ring at 18 after an incident that changed her life forever. 7 years of keeping a secret that no one in this city knew. Come on, little cleaner, Marcus continued, approaching her with the arrogant smile he often used to intimidate beginners. Just a little demonstration. I bet you don't even know how to hold a basic stance. Or maybe I should show my students the difference between someone who trains and someone who just cleans. Keira felt a familiar sensation in her chest, like a smoldering fire being fanned back to life after years of dormancy. Her eyes briefly met Marcus's, and for a moment, something passed between them that made the instructor instinctively take a step back. It's just an educational demonstration, Marcus emphasized, now trying to hide the sudden unease in his voice. Nothing serious, just to show the newcomers why respecting martial arts is important. Keira placed the bucket on the floor and slowly stood up. Her movements had an unusual grace for someone supposedly unfamiliar with the tatami mat. Around the dojo, the students stopped their training, sensing that something was about to happen. All right then, Keira finally spoke, her voice as calm as a lake before a storm. But when we're done, you're going to apologize to all of them for turning this mat into a circus. Marcus burst out laughing, but this time the sound was a bit strained. Apologize? You're the one who's going to apologize to the floor when you're sprawled out on it. What none of those people knew was that Keira Jordan was once Keira the Phoenix Jordan, a martial arts prodigy, the youngest national champion in history. She had retired at the peak of her career after a tragic incident that cost her best friend and biggest rival her career. Since then, she had vowed never to fight again. But some promises are made to be broken when dignity is threatened. Marcus adjusted his black belt with a dramatic flourish, clearly relishing every second of the attention. Everyone gather round. You're about to witness a real-life demonstration of why there's a hierarchy in the martial arts world. Keira watched the 8 students form a semicircle around the mat. A young man named Leo, who was always kind to Keira, whispered something to his friend next to him, who just shook his head in disagreement. Look here, everyone, Marcus continued, gesturing dramatically. Here we have a perfect example of someone who never understood that there are proper places for certain types of people. Elite dojos aren't for, well, you know. Keira felt the familiar pang in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced 7 years ago when she heard similar comments about young female fighters who didn't have the look of a champion. The difference was now, at 25, she had learned to channel that anger into fuel for something far more powerful than punches. Sensei Marcus, Leo timidly interrupted. Perhaps we should just continue with our regular practice. It's getting late. Leo Reyes, are you questioning my teaching methods? Marcus cut in sharply. Sit down and watch. You'll learn more in the next 5 minutes than in a month of regular practice. Keira noticed how Marcus used the young man's full name, a clear display of power. She also recognized the anxious look in his eyes. The exact same look she'd seen in the mirror years ago, when she'd woken up in a panic, recalling the fight that changed everything. Maya, her best friend, had gone down after a move by Keira. An unfortunate fall, a spinal injury. The investigation concluded it was an accident during competition, but Keira knew the truth. She had lost control due to pressure and provocative comments from the opposing coach. Come on, little cleaner, Marcus taunted. Or why don't you show my students a basic stance? Or is that too complicated for someone who just pushes a mop all day? Laughter echoed through the dojo, but Keira remained still. She closed her eyes for a moment, and in that instant, she was back in the national ring, hearing the same comments that led to the tragedy. What's wrong, scared? Marcus insisted, now circling Keira like a predator. Or are you just going to stand there like a lamppost, just like you hold that mop all day? That's when Marcus made his first fatal mistake. He gave Keira a light shove on the shoulder, a seemingly harmless touch, but one that carried all the arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences for his actions. Keira absorbed the push without budging. Her feet seemed rooted to the ground, and Marcus felt as though he'd just tried to push a concrete wall. The instructor's arrogant smile faltered for a second. Interesting, Keira murmured, speaking more to herself than to Marcus. It's been a long time since anyone tried to provoke me like that. There was something in Keira's voice that shifted the atmosphere. It wasn't threatening or angry. It was the chilling calm of someone who had walked through far darker valleys and returned transformed. Marcus, unable to read the danger signals, pressed on. Hear that, everyone? She thinks it's interesting. How about we show her the difference between thinking and knowing? What Marcus didn't realize was that every mocking word and gesture from him was awakening something that had lain dormant within Keira for 7 years. Not anger or a desire for revenge, but something far more dangerous. A vivid memory of who she truly was when she stopped hiding. Leo watched the scene with growing discomfort. There was something in the way the cleaner breathed, the almost imperceptible tensing of her muscles, that reminded him of the documentaries about big predators he watched on television. The calm before the attack. Last chance, little lady, Marcus declared, now clearly frustrated by Keira's silence. Either you accept this demonstration like a sport, or I'll call security to toss you out. And guess what? You'll be out of a job too. Keira slowly opened her eyes. When her gaze met Marcus's, the instructor felt a chill run down his spine, as if he had just awakened a phoenix he thought was a harmless sparrow. All right then, Keira finally said, her voice low but carrying an authority that instantly silenced everyone present. But when we're done, I want you to explain to your students why you turned a place of learning into a circus of humiliation. Marcus laughed, but this time the sound was laced with nervousness. Explain? You'll be doing a lot of explaining when you're sprawled out on the floor. What neither of them knew was that Keira had spent the last 7 years not just running from her past, but perfecting an emotional control that had transformed her former destructive rage into something refined and devastatingly effective. Each new insult only fueled a quiet power within her, a cold determination her old opponents knew well, but which Marcus was about to discover the hard way. Marcus adopted his favorite stance, the one he'd used to intimidate hundreds of beginners over the years. Feet shoulder-width apart, fists clenched at his chest, weight slightly forward, the classic stance of a martial artist in a controlled environment against predictable opponents. Keira stood still for a few seconds, simply observing. Her eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe, automatically cataloging every technical detail. The high guard that exposed his flank, the unstable base that compromised his balance, the excessive tension in his shoulders that telegraphed every move before it began. What are you waiting for? Marcus sneered, bouncing lightly on his feet. Or are you just going to stand there like a lamppost? That's when Keira did something no one expected. She began to move. It wasn't a dramatic shift, just a subtle adjustment of her feet, a slight lowering of her center of gravity, her shoulders relaxing into a perfect line. But for anyone who knew what to look for, the transformation was instantaneous and chilling. Leo felt a shiver run down his spine. In his 2 years of martial arts, he'd analyzed hundreds of hours of videos of great fighters. What he had just witnessed was the transition from an ordinary person to a born predator, a subtle yet devastating change. Interesting, Marcus muttered, his confidence wavering for the first time. There was something in the way Keira now occupied space that awakened all his self-preservation instincts. Keira took a step forward, and Marcus instinctively stepped back. The movement was so unconscious, so primal, that a few students recognized it. A black belt retreating from a cleaner. The power dynamic in the room had completely shifted. Is there a problem? Keira asked softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority that instantly silenced everyone. Marcus felt blood rush to his face. His reputation was on the line in front of his own students. He couldn't back down now, even though every fiber of his being screamed at him to stop and apologize. No problem, Marcus replied, forcing a smile. Just admiring your stance. Did someone teach you on YouTube? The joke fell flat. No one laughed. The tension in the room had become almost palpable. Actually, Keira said calmly, I learned it at a place called the National Training Center. Perhaps you've heard of it. Marcus frowned. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. The National Center? Did you attend some weekend retreat there? Leo discreetly pulled out his phone and quickly typed, National Training Center Martial Arts. What he found made his blood run cold. This wasn't just some preparatory course. It was where the nation's greatest champions of the past 3 decades had trained. Marcus, Keira continued, her voice still calm. Last chance. Apologize to Leo for questioning his right to speak up. Apologize to your students for turning this place into a circus. And most of all, apologize to yourself for becoming exactly the kind of person martial arts should have taught you not to be. The offer of clemency hung in the air. Marcus could have chosen humility. He could have admitted he'd crossed a line. He could have salvaged what little dignity he had left. Instead, he attacked. Marcus's first punch was technically perfect. A fast, precise jab, executed exactly as he had learned in the manual. It was the kind of punch that worked on 99% of the people he had sparred with over the years. Keira was not among that 99%. The movement was so fast that half the people present couldn't process what had happened. Keira simply wasn't where Marcus's punch was aimed. Her body glided to the side like water flowing around a rock. And suddenly, Marcus was off balance, his arms stretched out into the air. Good punch, Keira remarked softly, already in a different position and perfectly balanced. Clean technique, decent speed, but you telegraphed your intention with your right shoulder. Marcus spun wildly, trying to locate his opponent. How could someone move that fast? Beginner's luck, he muttered, speaking more to himself than to Keira. The second attack followed immediately. Jab, straight, hook, 3 quick punches in succession, with the precision of someone who had practiced thousands of times. It was his favorite combination, the one he used to end sparring sessions and impress newcomers. Again, Keira simply wasn't there. This time, Leo managed to follow the movements. Keira had lowered herself slightly, letting the jab glide inches over her head. The straight punch found only air as she leaned back in an impossible arc. And when Marcus threw the hook with all his might, Keira took a small step back, making the fist narrowly miss her chin by millimeters. Interesting combination, Keira commented, her breathing still steady. Works well against static opponents, but you're leaving your entire left flank open after the hook. Marcus started to sweat. This wasn't normal. He had thrown thousands of punches in his life, and now he couldn't land a single one on a girl who supposedly had never fought. Stop dancing around and fight, Marcus yelled, launching an even more aggressive flurry of strikes. That's when Keira decided the demonstration had gone on long enough. Marcus's third assault, a desperate combination of punches and kicks, once again found only air. But this time, something different happened. As Marcus regained his balance after missing all his strikes, Keira was inexplicably close. How? Marcus whispered, realizing he had completely lost control of the distance. Marcus, Keira said softly, now only an arm's length away. Do you want to know the difference between someone who learns to fight in a dojo and someone who learns in a professional ring? Before Marcus could answer, Keira did something that defied everything those present thought they knew about physics. Without any visible effort, without any sudden or aggressive movement, she simply touched Marcus's chest with the palm of her right hand. Marcus flew. He wasn't pushed or knocked down. He was literally propelled backward as if struck by an invisible wave. His feet left the ground, flying almost 2 meters through the air and landing on his back with a thud that left everyone in the room gasping. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus lay on the floor for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. There was no pain, just an irresistible force from someone operating on an entirely different level than anything he had ever known. That, Marcus muttered, trying to get up, that's impossible. Leo had stopped breathing. In his 2 years of martial arts, he had never witnessed such a display of controlled, devastating power. No brutality, no anger, just the pure application of technique he had only ever seen in legends. Actually, Keira said calmly, extending a hand to help Marcus up. It's quite simple once you understand leverage, timing, and energy transfer. Principles I learned throughout my professional career. Marcus ignored the outstretched hand and got up on his own, his legs still trembling. Professional career. In what? Leo answered, his voice almost a whisper. You don't understand who she is, do you? Everyone turned to him, still holding his mobile phone with the search results. On the screen, dozens of articles, images, and videos confirmed what his instincts had already recognized. Keira Jordan, he read aloud. Also known as the Phoenix, the youngest national champion in history, considered one of the most technical fighters of her generation, retired undefeated at 18 after an incident in the final match that severely injured her opponent. The impact of the words hit the room like a bomb. Marcus felt his face pale as the truth dawned on him. He had challenged a forgotten legend. He had publicly humiliated someone who could have taken him down with a casual flick. Now I'm a national champion, Marcus stammered, all his arrogance evaporating instantly. Keira nodded silently. I retired from competition at 18. Since then, I've taken any job I could find. Cleaning, waiting tables, simple jobs, a simple life. No spotlights, no cameras, no need to prove anything to anyone. The transformation in Marcus was immediate and painful. The arrogant man was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the true depth of his ignorance. I didn't know, Marcus whispered. If I had known. If you had known, would you have treated me with respect? Keira gently interrupted. But would you still have humiliated another cleaner? Another worker who doesn't have a title to defend themselves with? The question stung more than any physical attack. Marcus realized that Keira had pinpointed the root of his real problem. Not his ignorance of her title, but the fundamental arrogance that made him believe he could humiliate others based on their profession. Leo stepped forward, his voice firm. Sensei Marcus, for 2 years, I've trained at this academy out of respect for your experience. But what I witnessed today wasn't teaching. It was bullying disguised as instruction. The other students began to murmur in agreement. The truth about Keira had completely changed everyone's perspective on what they had just witnessed. Keira, Marcus finally said, his voice filled with a humility no one there had ever heard. I sincerely apologize to you, to Leo, to everyone here. I have no excuse for my behavior. Keira nodded, accepting the apology with the same grace she had shown throughout the confrontation. All right, Marcus, but an apology is just the first step. The question is, what will you do differently from now on? Marcus looked around the room, seeing his students with new eyes. Some seemed disappointed by his behavior. Others were clearly reevaluating everything they thought they knew about respect and hierarchy. I'll change, Marcus promised. It'll take time, but I'll change. That's when Leo asked a question that surprised everyone. Miss Jordan, would you consider teaching again? Because I think we could all learn so much more from someone who understands that true power comes with responsibility. Keira smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her that night. Perhaps, but not to teach fighting techniques. Rather, to teach something far more important, that respect isn't earned by belts or titles, but by character. As Marcus fully absorbed the most humiliating lesson of his life, a question still lingered in the air. Would one night of humility be enough to transform decades of arrogance? Or would an even deeper change be necessary for true justice to be served? 3 months later, the dojo had completely transformed. Keira Jordan was no longer just the cleaner. Leo had convinced the dojo owner to hire her as an instructor, specializing in advanced techniques and martial arts philosophy. Marcus Thorne had lost half his students in the first week after the incident. The video Leo had discreetly recorded went viral on social media, showing a black belt taken down by a little cleaner. His reputation in the martial arts community was ruined. Sensei Keira, Leo said after a class on respect and humility. Thank you for teaching me that true strength doesn't need to be flaunted to be recognized. Keira smiled, putting away her equipment. The best lesson I can teach is simple. Never judge anyone by their profession or their appearance. Everyone carries stories within them that can surprise us. Marcus continued to teach at a smaller dojo, but now with a humility enforced by public shame. He had learned a costly lesson that arrogance always comes with a price. Sometimes justice arrives quietly, like a storm that transforms everything without making a sound. Keira had proven that true revenge isn't about destroying your opponent, but about showing that greatness comes from character, not titles.